When I read the Bible, I find myself impressed with God's ability to surprise you and how He leads you to believe the unbelievable. I think of Abraham, who went from his country, his kindred, his father's house to a place he didn't know, on a journey that he never imagined would turn out the way it did. It was no different with Joseph, with Mary, the mother of Jesus, with Job, Mary Magdalene, and John the Baptist, just to name a few. It's been like that with me, with my family, and with the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada. No matter how challenging the circumstances or how unprepared we might be for the unknown, God is prepared to surprise us in unexpected ways. I've served the church for a lot of years, and I can testify that God has never let His church down. Even in the midst of the uncertainty of the last couple of years, God has seen His church through. I'd say we just have to make ourselves available, go wherever He leads us, and we'll never regret it.
Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada was founded in 1901 and is comprised of approximately 74,000 members. Church members, their family and friends, gather regularly for worship and service in 400 congregations across the country, and they are ministered to by more than 300 pastors and 2,600 church employees.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada is here for the primary purpose of supporting our conferences in producing strong churches and schools that are reaching their communities for Jesus.
Seventh-day Adventists serve their communities not only through churches, but also through its educational system, a humanitarian agency, a radio station, retirement residences, and media ministries in both English and French.
Avec authenticité.
The church operates 40 primary and secondary schools, as well as one university, where almost 350 full and part-time educators serve close to 4,000 students. God has done amazing things. Between 2016 and 2021, more than 8,000 new members joined the church through baptism. From St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador to Victoria, British Columbia, from Igloolik, Nunavut to Montreal, Quebec, from the Maritimes to the Prairies, from the Northwest Territories and Yukon to Windsor, Ontario, the Seventh-day Adventist Church continues to experience transformation, spiritual growth, a richly diverse membership, and a focus on service to the community. But this journey hasn't been without its challenges. The year 2020 looked promising, but then COVID-19 hit. Individuals and organizations, including the church, found themselves navigating uncharted waters.
Church, worship, school, community service have always been a communal experience. All of a sudden, pastors, church members, church administrators, office staff, teachers, students, people from across all sectors of the church organization were scratching their heads, trying to figure things out together. How are we going to make this look like and feel like real community, true schooling, and real worship going forward? Can we pull it off ever? And if we can, how?
But Adventists across Canada found creative ways to pull through and continue to worship and minister to their communities.
Je voulais faire quelque chose pour le Seigneur. Vous savez, les pandémies ont frappé dur. Mais je voulais vraiment faire quelque chose pour le Seigneur. Donc, je ne savais pas quoi faire. Et l'idée est venue pour utiliser les multimédias. Alors, je n'avais pas d'expérience, je commençais à utiliser, évidemment, et je faisais des erreurs, mais c'est pas grave. Mais à un moment donné, je visitais mes petits-enfants et ils m'ont dit « Papy, pourquoi tu n'utilises pas les TikTok ?» Je ne connaissais pas les TikTok, il prend mon cellulaire, il installe le logiciel sur mon cellulaire. Et je commençais à l'utiliser et finalement, c'est celle qui fonctionne le mieux. Environ 8000 abonnés, 80 000 des likes, environ 95 000 des personnes qui ont visualisé une de vidéocassettes. Alors moi, je vous encourage d'utiliser les multimédias pour propager l'Évangile. 6 pays qui me suivent. Vous avez besoin d'aide, passez-moi un coup de téléphone.
When the pandemic prevented us from worshiping together in person, it forced our local churches in the British Columbia Conference to come together in the most creative of ways. The local churches opened their hearts and homes to their online worshipers. One church's music was affectionately coined Songs from the Sofa. Our churches celebrated seasonal Sabbaths in the most innovative ways, such as the virtual Easter service dramas, virtual praise teams, and choirs. Amazingly, our churches and ministries continue to serve others, providing food, supplies, flowers, partnering with local businesses to donate large screen TVs to seniors and shut-ins, helping them to worship on a big screen at home. Found ways to support frontline workers with lawns, signs, and donating complimentary hot beverages at the local hospital. While the British Columbia Conference provided training to the local churches to stay together while apart, continuing their worship online with their communities, the dedication and resilience of the churches, by the grace of God, use technology to grow closer together.
Here in Charlottetown, PEI, the challenges brought by COVID-19 pandemic never stopped the work of the church. Reduced capacity, social distancing, masks, and other restrictions only made us work harder and harder to spread the message of hope and salvation. And now our content in English and Spanish, live streamed on Facebook and YouTube pages, is available to anyone around the world.
Throughout all the difficulties, we have experienced growth. And as I think of the history of God's people throughout the centuries, and as I look at the picture of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada today, I realize that there is one key element that helps the church make a difference in the community around us, and that is personal contact. Nothing surpasses good conversation and the power of personal testimony.
I'm fairly new to the church. I joined in about 2018. I had a young girl living with me from Brazil, and she introduced me to the church, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe the relationship she had with God, and it was like Jesus was in my house. I found it was so awesome to know Jesus as if he was right there with you, your best friend, and I wanted that relationship. When Walt was starting the program with ADRA, the foods, he asked if I'd like to help out.
Mavis is one of several volunteers who give of their time to help with the Lethbridge Seventh-day Adventist Church Food Bank. It all started with Walt Calkin's compassionate spirit, his insight into logistics, and love for service.
When COVID first happened, there were a lot of people that were left without a source of food. Either the stores had closed down or they were limited, and then there was individuals that were just either too ill or too fearful to go out and shop. So we contacted the food wholesalers, manufacturers, distributors, even stores, and asked them if they had any excess food that we could take and deliver to individuals that were food insecure. Well over 95% of the food that we deliver is free, is donated. At the end of the week, we share outside of our back door, and that can be up to 100 food hampers a week, every Sabbath. It's good to do good on the Sabbath, Jesus tells us.
We just want to make sure that the families have what they need. Having my son doing it with me, and him also witnesses the ways in which God provides for these people. And I think that it's the blessing that we feel that we are given, and it's nothing compared to the blessing that we are receiving and serving.
This ministry was born out of just some head scratching and some prayer about what we could do.
There is a number of these initiatives taking place around the country. It may seem like a daunting task, but where there is a will and the willingness to allow the Holy Spirit to make the way, wonderful things will happen. When crises hit, the church will be there, working to bring relief to those affected by these crises. People displaced by the wildfires and floods in British Columbia and Ontario over the past few years have seen the helping hand of Jesus in the dedicated service of Seventh-day Adventists. Wherever there is humanitarian crisis, the church will be there to help.
Whether here at home or abroad, the church is committed to alleviating the suffering of our fellow human beings. And both through prayer and physical presence, we see that our people are willing to go wherever the need is.
When talking about need, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada recognizes the need for reconciliation of Indigenous peoples with everyday Canadians. Established in 2003, the Mamui Ataskatan Native School, located near Ponoka, Alberta, is a violence-free learning community that integrates proven practices of physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being into each-day activities in a distinctly Cree environment. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, in partnership with First Nations University and Kazabon Productions, is the first denomination in Canada to make the 4 Seasons of Reconciliation Indigenous Relations course available to all its members and employees.
What if we were the first denomination in Canada to have the majority, if not all of our members through this course and living healing, reconciliatory relationships for today and eternity?
The Seventh-day Adventist Church will continue to intentionally go and develop respectful relationships with the Indigenous peoples of Canada for healing and reconciliation.
Sometimes God gives us an assignment and relocates us, and we don't realize why until after we get there. That's the adventure of going with God. Take my friends Jim and Selena. They moved across the country and ended up in northern Ontario, where they figured out what God wanted them to do, and they've gone about doing it.
We're Kapuskasing, Ontario. It's 10 hours north of Toronto. We've been here for 5 years.
2015, we took our first trip. The people have embraced us very well.
Yep.
Although it was God's leading that brought us here, but what we're doing today was not a part of our plan.
IS Market Garden, we started that to reach out to the community so that we could get to know more people.
Through that has opened the door for different conversations. So why aren't you guys open on Saturday? Why don't you go to the market garden in town and you can make so much more money? I was like, nope, that's our day of rest, that's our Sabbath.
You learn new things every day as you keep going, and yeah, it's interesting.
Friday nights, because my parents moved, Allison comes down from Cochrane. Whoever's available, there's a lady in town that she brings along. A couple other ladies and their children sometimes come, and we do Friday night Vespers.
We would look at various Bible studies that we could look at, and we went into a Vespers where we talked about things that were really on our hearts. Things that Selena would ask some probing questions to get answers from different people. And when she first started it, you don't hear too much. But now, you're hearing more.
Back when the pandemic started, I'd seen the ministry in the States was sending out a paper, trying to connect the pandemic with God, and God isn't responsible for bad things. I was in the shop the one day and I just felt like I had to do something, so I scribbled it out on a notepad I had. Wrote a paper, about 600 words. My wife edited it and we sent it out in May, and we had some responses from that. It was encouraging. But I felt we needed to do something where we were staying in contact with the community beyond just one time. And so we've been sending out the paper on a semi-regular basis since then in the spring of 2019. That's what I wanted to do, is just create questions, create thoughts, and let God deal with it from there. I have a burden for rural areas because that's where I come from, so this is our way of reaching out.
I'm interested in the way that God asks us to relate to people that He places in our lives. I had some friends at one church that I pastored who were wonderful people with the ability to serve other folks. I think of Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary had a ministry of inviting people home after church. These were people that she felt needed a warm meal and some good conversation. And people were always in Aunt Mary's home. She made them feel special. And she would take, as people were leaving, she'd take like a little cottage cheese carton or something and put some fried rice in there. Maybe she'd pick a piece of fruit from one of the trees in the backyard and say, "Here, take this. You'll need this later this afternoon or next week when you're going to school." Some of these were university students. Aunt Mary made a huge impact on an awful lot of people. They loved her. And then one day, Aunt Mary got sick, very sick. She died. And I felt bad because I loved being around Aunt Mary, just like other people did. And when we had the funeral for Aunt Mary, it was interesting because the church was a church in a city where this congregation could sit or accommodate probably 600 people. Usually about 100 to 150 would come to church on Sabbath. During Aunt Mary's funeral, 600 people showed up. And they sat there out of respect for this woman who cared for them. At the end of the funeral service, I remember standing at the head of the casket as people filed by for an hour and a half or 2 hours just to say goodbye. Aunt Mary had a huge impact in her community. It wasn't complicated. She just liked doing what she felt Jesus would want her to do. And the people loved it. I think that when we get to see Jesus, and I get to see Aunt Mary again, maybe Aunt Mary and I will have the opportunity to greet a whole bunch of people who saw Jesus in what Aunt Mary did after church on Sabbath afternoon.
By your grace may the power of Christ rest upon me. I've made up my mind, I will go.
God has taken us on a journey that only He could have designed. I was born in Burundi, where 300,000 people died in civil war. I spent 9 years in refugee camp in Tanzania, and eventually God opened the door for me to come to Canada. Here, not only did I get the education to become a pastor, I also met my beautiful wife, Kellen Harushimana, and God continues to amaze us every single day on this journey.
I was born and raised in Newfoundland. The year I earned my wellness degree, I also married my best friend, Etienne. Together we moved to Newfoundland to minister in my home province, and now with our daughter Amia, we continue to do ministry together as a family. My friends, God will do amazing things when you make yourself available to Him.